course, I grew up at the Mill Pond Inn over there. The little building right across the house across the street, and that was always called the Yankee Heights when my mother and father bought it in 1960. An older lady named Mrs. Kinney, I can't remember her first name, she owned it. And my parents, I think they bought it for $18,000 back in 1960. And they reverted the further end to two apartments. And now I guess it's just a bed and breakfast. I'd be kind of anxious to see what it looks like inside because I haven't been in there for so long. But no, I've done a lot. Like I said, us kids, we do stuff that we made sure the parents weren't around when we did it, like climb across the old ice house mechanisms out back where the ice used to slide, go up the chute to go inside the building. And people, when it was broke, when they weren't using it, people would just use the ice house, just go in there and change into the bathing suit. They did that for years until they cleaned it up and town knocked it down. But back then, of course, Damariscotta Mills was almost as busy as the downtown Damariscotta itself back a long time ago because of the river and the fish. And of course, everything was caught by hand back then. The metal dippers went down the fish stream. They didn't get down there till my grandfather invented them back in 1956, 57. And when he invented those, and all of a sudden the labor force went downhill, and the men around Damariscotta Mills weren't very fond of my grandfather because he took jobs away from them, but he was more interested in raising money for the towns of Nobleboro and Newcastle. Yeah, they had these big nets, and they probably had 14, 15 men, different pools that would just scoop them up and throw them in the bin and do it that way. So they had to hire all that help, and then they all went down to the building, and the women down in there went across this little conveyor belt. I remember this little conveyor belt, and they would slice them up in different ways. And some of them were shipped to overseas, and other ones, of course, back then in the 50s when I saw that, they were shipping it for people food. But then later on, I guess people they wanted to call for it quite so much, so everything went to a C-Pro market over in Rockland. It was a factory. It was a company over there that got LYs for cat food, dog food, fertilizer, and of course the fishermen loved it for lobster bait too. But of course lobsters will eat just about anything. Down to the fish stream, that whole cement walk there was all one big building at one time, and they tore down about 2/3 of it, and there's just what's little bits left there now. But that's where we used to store all the fish in there. And the women used to work in there. They had pickle barrels in there, and right down at the end next to the road, which would be just across from the smokehouse, there was a big barrel. It must have been 15 feet in diameter, and that they would do is fill it right up, and then the truck would come along and take it out and take it to wherever they dissected it. So I think it was 1972. I was a year out of high school, and they used to have fishing catching things on the powerhouse side. They had dippers over there too, but the dippers were smaller than the ones at Nobleboro. The ones in Nobleboro are so wide that I don't have long enough legs to get over it. But the ones in Newcastle were smaller ones. My grandfather made them smaller, and I could get right underneath them, get over them, and straddle it and push the fish right into the dipper. And I had one Saturday down there. I worked all by myself. I caught 500 bushel of alewives, and I think that's still the most yet. It shows like 5 smokehouses around this area where they smoked alewives. Now Willie Oliver, who lived right up here on the right, the one, two, three, third house down goes down into a gully. Well, he had a smokehouse there. I can remember him smoking, then walking by the house back in the early 60s going home. He got the fire going, smoking. And then down by you know where the smokehouse is now, that's always been there. But across the bridge, there's a narrow, on the other side of the guardrail, there's a narrow piece of land right there. They had 2 or 3 smokehouses through there back in those days. You see, alewives were a lot more popular back then than they are now. My grandma and grandfather, every year they'd have to buy smoked alewives, and I remember having lunch with my grandmother, and she'd have smoked alewives for lunch because it was an awful bony fish. But they had a good taste to them. I wouldn't want to eat them once a week for 52 weeks. Yeah, for Mr. Kinney. Mr. Kinney used to own the hydro plant. He was from Wyndham. He had a factory down there, and quite a big factory. At least I thought it was. And he owned the powerhouse and all the rights. And of course, my grandfather he ran the fish stream, and And he was great friends with Mr. Kinney, so Mr. Kinney had him operate the dam so as to let water out. Not when you're supposed to, but when you can. And but it's hard to please everybody on the lake because this is a 12-mile long lake, and you can't please everybody. I mean, some of the depths too much, and there's not enough. And you had to consider the alewives too, which they were glad to have my grandfather because he was an alewife man. We used to, when Hollis Nelson owned this place, he used to build fire trucks in here. It was a welding shop. And there used to be a basketball hoop right outside these glass doors. I like to play basketball, but Hollis's boys, they weren't too crazy about basketball, so we didn't play that much. But I remember I used to sleep overnight upstairs, and it was dusty, just a storage place, But Hollis's sons, Freddie and Johnny, were my age, and we had quite a time. When Hollis would go over to Belvedere to his house, us kids knew how to get into this place. We'd go right up underneath right here off this porch, go up underneath, go upstairs, go out through the window. There was a station right out here. Go up the roof, go down the other side, and just wait for people to get out of the way and jump overboard. But his son Johnny used to do a flip and dive in. I wouldn't do that, but there's not much water over there. But he knew how to do it, and his father was a crackerjack. Hollis Nelson Sr. was even in his 60s, he could dive like some guys going to the Olympics. He was great. Oh yeah. God, I remember coming home sometime nights, 1 o'clock in the morning, and parked my car across from the Mill Pond Inn, where everybody parks now to go swimming. I used to park my car at the 53 Chevy there. And God, Hollis hadn't left the shop yet. He'd be 1 o'clock in the morning, be over here playing on his saxophone. So I used to go over and stand on the bridge and just listen to him play the saxophone. He was great. I mean, he was a talented musician. He could really, really play. But what used to get me is that Hollis would come over to my house, to my mother and father's house right across the bridge, and be over there with a fellow named Bert Ricker who could play the piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. They could really play the piano. And Hollis come over with his horn. My mother was a great singer. They used to hire her to sing for him. She sounded like Judy Garland. And they'd hire her for all these events and this and that. Well, they'd come over there and conjugate and probably have a couple drinks. And next thing you know, we had an awful hootenanny over there between those old fellas playing the banjo or the piano or the Hollis on the horn. It was great. It was great. But I was a little embarrassed just being a young kid listening to all this hootenanny music, but I learned to like it very much. But Damariscotta Mills back then, in the 50s and back in the 60s, there was a lot of vacant buildings around here. That brown house right across the street, I mean, all the time I was growing up, that was vacant. It was always vacant. Of course, us kids like we were, we always found a way into the building. I mean, there was no lease on us. So we went into all the buildings around here. I mean, down there off Depot Street, down next to tracks where it says where the railroad station used to be, there used to be a building twice as big as this. It was a J.B. Ham laundry, and it was gigantic. And inside it was just like they just left it. It had been vacant for probably 25 years. But in there was the old laundry carts. Us kids go in there and play in the laundry carts, and we was into everything we probably weren't supposed to be. And then Colby and Gale had a big building down there where they used to have their 4 fuel tanks, and they'd get their oil and they'd go disperse it through the neighborhood, and that was one of our baseball lots. We used to play baseball there. There's those looms right up here. There must be something from down there. I'm always seeing them over there. This used to be a boat launch right here, and when I came down on my 53 Chevy, I'd drive right down the lake and wash my car in there. And back, didn't think anything of it. Of course, back then, everybody washed their hands to wash up and dive in the water, and all you see the shampoo go along the water, And just as long as there wasn't any kids down here to run over, I'd pull my car, the cars would pull right down here and start washing them out. But can't do that no more. It's still there, but it's covered up with grass. It's where the horses used to. It's about this big. And us kids and Hollis, he didn't have to, but he fixed it up so it always bubbled. It would always, and he had a thing in the side of it so that when the water got so high, it would drain down through so as to keep it moving, And of course, us kids running around the mills, there must have been 15 of us. We'd get thirsty, we'd go stick our head in there and take a good drink. Water came right down from the lake. And there were so many buildings around here that were empty. They had one house right across from the fire department down here, not completely across, but up a little bit to the right. And that house, you go inside it, and it looked like a bomb went off in it. It took the whole floor out. But on one side there was just a piano sitting there. So us kids used to go in there and pound on that damn piano a little bit, you know, and do everything we wasn't supposed to. And go to fish stream, and they had some Concord grapevines in one part of the fish stream, which you can't see. It's on the west side of the new ladder they built there. You can't see it, but we used to swing across these rocks on these vines. And people would say to me later on, "What was it like growing up in Damariscotta Mills?" I said, "It was just like a Tom Sawyer Huck Finn adventure, really. You know, I don't know how many times I slept on that island." And we used to play, us kids, we used to play ragtag around here. We'd have a rag, and, "Oh, you're it. Well, this one fellow, Richard, my friend Richard Powell, who's now a selectman in Nobleboro, he was bound determined he was going to get me. I said, "No, you're not." And I started swimming towards the island. I figured he'd give up, but he never did. He was as stubborn as I was. I swam all the way to the island, and then I walked across, and he was right behind me, 50, 60 feet, but he was. So I run down through the woods. There wasn't any cottages there then. I think there was just a real small one right over there, Mr. Wheeler owned. And I run down through the woods, and he never did get me, but that was funny. He chased me way out there. We used to have bonfires right on the ice before it was illegal to put a fire on the ice. Of course, it was all open up to here because the dam beyond, the powerhouse beyond, it would be all open right here. This is where the ducks would fly in and just circle around, see if they see anything good. So we put our ice traps up there around that buoy and start a fire over in that cove or something. Or even I just put my skates on. I used to go skating just the day before, right on Thanksgiving. Go skating. There was out behind Allison's house, there was a little swamp out there in this cove right here. It would be all froze over, just enough so you could go skating before Thanksgiving. Now you basically almost going swimming at Thanksgiving. And then Hollis, every time it would snow, Hollis would come out here with his Jeep and his plow, and he'd plow a big oval ring for us to be able to skate around. We got caught in Johnny Nelson and I, we canoed the whole thing one time. We was only like 13, and we stayed at an island in Great Bay, and all of a sudden a hurricane, a tropical storm come out, and of course Great Bay is big, and we was on one end of it towards the north end, but looking down, and you could see the storm coming, the waves. I mean, it was just like this where we was, but up that way, you could see it coming. Oh, we got in the tent. The tent wasn't waterproof, as we found out. So what we do, we got underneath the canoe and held it down because it was awful wind. And I guess my mother was wild, is what I hear afterwards, because Hollis and my father went on patrol to try to find us. So they had to go up the East Pond Road to try to catch up with us, up near Sunset Lodge. And then my father got a speedboat over there, and I can remember getting in that and going water skiing out here with all my friends. We'd take turns water skiing. And then when my parents left one day, I said, this is the day I'll do it. Because they were gone, I was going to do some stupid stuff. So I had to have a friend of mine, Gordon Prentice, who I knew how to drive a boat. I said, "I'm going to ski right underneath this bridge." I said, "When you get in there, Gordon," I said, "you can't whip the boat around and ski back out because it's just not big enough." I said, "When you get in there so long, just hold back on the throttle." So I was skiing along and moved. There wasn't as many people swimming, and I got right down on my haunches like that, skied right underneath the bridge. It's the only time I ever did that because my mother and father went there, so they'd see me. At one time, I let go of the rope. I was coming in too hot, and I ended up underneath the building itself on the rocks, and I cut myself all up and broke my ski, and people were jumping out. Hollis was Hollis. He was quite a comedian. Well, anyway, he got this old sofa, and he got that sofa up 40, 50 feet in the air, and he put it right across the top. He cut the tree off the top. Somehow he was able to bond it up the very top. And my father, my father come home from the ironworks back in the early 60s, and there's Hollis be up there just laying down, reading a book or something. He's in his 60s probably, and he's climbed this tree so he can lay down on the sofa and bathe up there. Oh, you thought he was an eagle. But that sofa stayed there for geez, I bet it was there 10 years or more, 15 years. He secured it well. I can remember a couple of us used to, there's a big ledge right there, right across from Mill Pond Inn, the other side of the pond. There's a big ledge. We used to dive off that ledge right into Mill Pond. But you had to dive because there was a rock down here and there was a rock right here. You dive right in the middle. But that was, I remember that used to hurt my head a little bit. But it's funny, over the years, it seems like all the little kids used to come on this side and go swimming because they had a little beach area. And now all the little kids go over there where it's all rocky. Everything's changed. Now I'm older. I don't want to get in the rocks, so I'm on the little side.